Unstable.
This whole system is deeply flawed, and that's why I talk a lot about free markets and property rights, Austrian economics, and getting rid of the Fed. All these things are now up for grabs. A lot of people, especially the young people, are looking at this. So for this reason, I'm a bit encouraged by, what might come out of this. But I think we're going to go through the ringer. I think it's going to get much, much worse, and it's bad enough already. But there's no way that we can step back. The one thing I'm convinced of after having spent so much time in Washington is that this will not be a gradual recovery from this disaster that we have. We're not going to elect enough people and enough courage to vote the right way, and there's too much demagoguing and too much misunderstanding that people would revolt. But the collapse will come. It's going to hit the dollar, and then we're going to have our opportunity. So the more people who are protected intellectually as well as financially, the better off we'll be in rebuilding what we'll have, what we'll need to do in the near future.
Buckle your seatbelt. It's time for another episode of the Prepper Recon podcast. I've personally been buying gold and silver from JM Bullion for over 2 years. They offer the best prices over spot that I can find, and I've never had a problem with an order. If you're looking to trade in some of your fiat paper for real money, check out jmbullion.com today.
Our individual first aid kits are now on sale. They're MOLLE-compatible pouches in Coyote, ACU, OD, or Black. They're equipped with an Israeli battle dressing, quick clot, TK4 tourniquet, suture kit, and lots of extras. It's perfect for your car, bug-out bag, or home first aid kit. Go to the PrepperRecon.com homepage and click on the IFAC store tab at the top of the page. They're on sale for $89, and that includes shipping. This kit could save your life.
Today's guest is Ferfal. Ferfal has been on the show a couple of times before. Ferfal, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. It's great being here with you.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of American preppers are anticipating an economic collapse, but you actually lived through the 2001 economic collapse in Argentina. Our regular listeners are familiar with your story, but for folks who are new to the podcast, can you give them a brief description of what happened and how you survived?
Sure. I was in Argentina, where I was born, lived most of my life, and because of a huge national debt that the country had and other circumstances involving lots of unemployment, a national industry that had suffered greatly because of a conversion rate with the national currency, with the dollar, which was 1-to-1, 1 peso, which is the national currency in Argentina, was $1, so pretty much everything was cheaper being bought from abroad. So that killed the national industry, and combined with a huge debt, it didn't end well. It ended up in a default of the national debt and a huge mess. People losing their money, bank accounts being frozen, and devaluation that caused people to lose over 60% of their savings, 60-70%.
And the president of the country fleeing in a helicopter, is that right?
Yeah, the president just plain out resigning, saying can't take it anymore. He left. The next guy that came also left, and the sad story of having 5 different presidents in a week.
Yeah, well, I think that most of the people that listen to this show would probably be happy to see our president flee in a helicopter.
Yeah, you know what? When you actually have that happening, you know what? The thing is this. What suffers is not so much the guy that leaves, but the institution that he's leaving behind. It loses credibility. I mean, I know, and believe me, I've had that feeling myself before, not liking who you have as a president. But what you want is him to leave when it's his time and vote someone better in his place.
That's right. That's right. Now, you just finished a new book. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's called Bugging Out and Relocating. It's basically the homework I did myself for leaving Argentina when I did, the plans I had in case I had to leave ahead of time, countries I was considering, the basic strategy of where to locate yourself so as to be better off and have not only better off in terms of preparedness, but also just for life in general.
Now, your first book, The Modern Survival Manual, was geared a little bit more towards urban survival. How is this book different?
Well, the first one, as you say, it's more of an urban survival manual. A modern survival manual, as the title says, I guess. And it's basically about living through that sort of thing, living through an economic collapse and the mess that it comes along with. Very high crime rates, which was one of the things that I had to adapt to the most. Always being on guard, always being worried about your security, but also dealing with lots of inflation, money being always a problem, always struggling to make ends meet, and just life being tough, and all those things that sometimes don't get covered when you typically read about survival and preparedness. A lot of things relating to natural disasters or wilderness survival, but not so much written about that sort of thing.
Now, how do we decide if we should bug out or bug in?
Well, as I explained in the second book, as you were saying, the first one is about urban survival. That would be mostly about bugging in, right? When you live through that sort of thing. But in that same book, in my first book, I actually said, and this was several years ago, at the end of the day, when things get really, really bad, the only option you have is leaving. And the thing is this, you don't get to choose if you bug in or you bug out. Those decisions are made for you. And right now, for example, in Oregon with the fires, people don't have an option. They have to leave. If you look at Syria, if you're stuck in Gaza right now being shelled, you have to leave. You don't have an option. So it's about having plans in case that moment never comes. Now, it's also true that sometimes you do get to relocate at your own disposal, at your own criteria, like many of us do. Like I was kind of forced into doing it a little bit quicker because things were getting uglier fast. But it's also true that if you get to choose where you relocate, having a little bit more information and knowing what to look for will definitely help you.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Katie Armor offers affordable body armor, including level 3 trauma plates made of AR-500 steel. They can endure multiple rounds from pistols and rifles up to 7.62 NATO. Their plates are available with Rhino Linings coatings to reduce SPA. Go to katiearmor.com, that's CATI armor.com today. If it is decided for us that we have to bug out, is that the time that we need to start putting a plan in place for bugging out? Or is that something we need to do ahead of time?
Exactly. It's uncomfortable. It's not pretty to think about what would I do if my house suddenly burns down and I lose everything and I have to leave my house. What do I have to do if my neighborhood gets flooded or destroyed by a wildfire and I have to leave my entire neighborhood? Or even worse, what would I do if there's a massive natural disaster or man-made one or civil war or something like that basically forces me to leave my country entirely? Or like in my case, a huge economic collapse that basically changes the country in which you're living in, and you have to make that hard decision of, okay, the standards of living are not acceptable anymore, I have to find somewhere else to live. If you have those things thought out before, ahead of time, you're going to be better off when those tough moments come.
And then you sort of took your time about it and was able to do a lot of research and find what countries were going to be easier to allow you to get citizenship for, right, and what the economic stability of the place that you were going to was, and right, and those types of things. But that's not a decision that you want to have to make in 30 minutes and say, oh my gosh, the country's falling apart. I need to grab my family and go to the airport right now. If you find yourself in that type of a situation, you want to already kind of have an idea about those places, right?
Yeah, it's much better. I mean, guys, I'm not talking here about traveling all over the world. I came to Ireland without ever setting foot in the place before in my life, and almost 3 years later, I can assure you that things turn out pretty well, much better than most people would have thought of. But if you at least do the mental exercise of where would I go? Where do I have family? Where do I even have citizenship? Or where would my citizenship, wherever it is that I am from, where would I be allowed even as a tourist or to stay for some time and get back on my feet? If you do that ahead of time, if the moment ever comes that you have to leave all of a sudden, if I look at my case, for example, we wanted to leave Argentina since the economy collapsed in 2001, 2002. Still, we wanted to go to U.S., right? That was our main goal. And as time went by, U.S. immigration is much tougher than it seems. People are a little bit misguided based on all the illegal immigrants. They think it's easy. It's definitely not easy to do so legally. And as years went by, we kept trying to move to U.S., but always coming to the same issues. Now, it came to a point where we had to leave pretty fast because things were going downhill pretty fast, especially after the re-election of the president, some of the more drastic measures being taken. And in that moment, we decided to leave in a couple months. I already had this idea of Europe because of our European citizenship, and basically after researching, Ireland took out like a good option.
Yeah, well, we would have been happy to have you here, and it is a big secret, so don't let it get out. But our southern border is completely wide open, and nobody's guarding it. Our entire military,
so I heard.
Our entire military is spread out in U.S. bases across 130 different countries. So basically, we're out to lunch, and we left the door unlocked.
You would think that securing other countries would be a greater challenge than securing your own border, but for some reason, apparently, no one figured that out.
Yeah, it's just a fence is really all we're asking for. Which I live in South Florida, and we have a big stretch of highway that goes straight through the Everglades from the east side of Florida to the west side of Florida. It's called Alligator Alley, and it goes straight through the Everglades, and there's alligators, and you can just see them like sunning out on the side of the road, on each side of the road, and they've got these big, huge fences that keep the alligators from coming out onto the road. So I know that the Americans are capable of building at least 200 miles worth of fence. So all they have to really do is just replicate that for a couple hundred more miles. We're not asking for the Great Wall of China.
Yeah, it's a really complicated issue. As an immigrant myself, I do understand. And you know what, guys? The thing is this. If you were in their position, I told this to several people. If you were in their position, you would be doing the exact same thing. You would be trying to get out of your crappy country that's falling apart and make it to a better place. Now, the thing is that you have to have a system by which people that want to do that can do that, and at the same time, secure your own borders for people that have no business doing so, don't do it, But it's someone like me that had maybe a good circumstances, good claims to make become a legal immigrant, is capable of doing so.
Oh, yeah. I don't think, I can't say everybody, but I don't think most people blame the immigrants. It's certainly our own government's fault for leaving the border so porous, which was a big problem for Rome. They had very porous borders, and that had a lot to do with military overstretch because their armies were too spread out and kind of all over the place and not really securing the borders of Rome. And,
but I don't really think it's accidental. I cannot believe that the U.S. government cannot secure, as you were saying. I think they're capable of building a fence if they wish to do so.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you just hit the nail on the head. I think it's a planned thing, maybe to overwhelm our welfare system. And back in the '60s, there were two professors. I was a husband and wife team in Columbia University, and very liberal college, and they came up with a plan to basically take us to a complete socialist, communist system by overwhelming the welfare system, and it's called the Cloward and Piven. That was the name of the two professors, and their strategy is now called the Cloward and Piven strategy, and that's basically what they said you should do is just overwhelm your welfare system. And that's really the reason that people are coming here, because a lot of the people that we're seeing flood in now are people that are either too young, too old, too overweight. They're not in shape to work. We used to have a lot of people that wanted to come over to America to work and get jobs.
Well,
because
they look pretty skinny to me.
Yeah, some of them, but a lot of those are children, the ones you're talking about. But a lot of the people.
I understand what you're saying. I do. It's it's a pretty complex and pretty evil scheme if you think about it.
Yes. Now, are there certain types of vehicles that'll be better to bug out in than others, and will that depend on the situation?
Well, we were talking about that before, right? About the different vehicle. In this book, I actually write about maybe not always having the bigger, huge off-road vehicle being the most suited for real bug outs. If you think about it, most of the time, if you have to evacuate a place in a hurry, it's not that likely that your worst problem will be fording rivers and such, even though it is possible, and this will depend entirely on your own overall location. But in general, what seems to be most of an issue is reaching where you have to go to with the amount of fuel that you have at your disposal. So I try to make a point about finding that in-between point of having a vehicle that's off-road capable, but also good enough in terms of mileage.
And then is it possible that someone would have to abandon their vehicle and bug out on foot? And if so, is it important to be in good shape for that?
Well, absolutely. One of the things that I actually included in the book was the charts to actually have a basic idea of your overall fitness level. If you're not capable of walking the distance required to bug out if you lose your vehicle, and this goes back to the basic philosophy of preparedness, and we see it a lot. I know you do as well. Guys that focus on the caliber they should have for self-defense, and they don't realize that they are 50 pounds overweight or 100 pounds overweight. Dude, you're gonna be dying of a stroke or a heart attack in the next couple of weeks. Don't worry so much about the caliber. Worry about your arteries and your heart.
Sure, and I guess smoking and drug addiction all kind of feeds into that same vein.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, we're seeing an increasing amount of people deciding to bug out of America. When do you think we need to decide it's time to leave this country?
I cannot, in all honesty, advise anyone to leave the United States because I would be there myself. So it would be, I would be a hypocrite if I did so. I would say if for those that actually think, this is something that I get a lot. People emailing me asking, I want to leave the United States, America is falling apart, or the typical America with a K is becoming a communist, big brother state, whatever. You don't appreciate America until you're not living there anymore, okay? And wherever it is that you are in the United States and you're not happy with it, there's a good chance that you have a state or somewhere within a state that it's going to be more than suited for the things that you want, and that you think you're going to be finding abroad, and you're just mistaken. You're not going to be finding those things in our countries because no other country has a Second Amendment. No other country has the amount of preppers and survivalists. I'm not very much of of using the prepper thing. I think it's a little bit hyped in the media. I'm more of a survivalist. But if you are if you're looking for that sort of thing, right, self-reliant people, you will not find more of those anywhere else than in the United States. So I suggest sticking around. In spite of that, I think it's a good idea to have a place to go to if you ever have to make that call. And this is the mental exercise and the homeschool kind of thing that I suggest in this book.
And then you have a nice, you've got a lot of charts and lists and things that give you a lot of data on specific countries in the book. Is that right?
Right. I include several charts regarding different countries. I mean, many of the charts are basically of all countries. So as to, you know what? A lot of people think of third world countries, especially in Central America. I mean, we're just talking right now about illegal immigrants, and people want to go to those places where guys are willing to leave and move to your country illegally, and you're thinking of going there legally. That doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't make any sense because it's just not reasonable. I include lots of information regarding different countries, but also regarding different states as well. Important, at least to me, is cost of living, crime, general quality of life, education, those things. Looking within U.S., those charts will help you make a better decision as well.
Yeah, but I think that was a really good caveat that you gave us, that this is probably the best place to be for now. But like you said, we never know when this totalitarian police state is going to be instituted. Just recently, we had Obama ban the importation of Russian AK-47s, which I'm sure that the cover story of that is that it's going to hurt Russia because
right.
because it's sort of a economic economic punishment to them.
He's banning the gun that he hates the most, just out of pure coincidence.
Yes, but
I don't believe in coincidence.
But I would have thought if you really wanted to place some economic hardship on Russia, you probably would have wanted to ban Russian vodka, because I'm sure they'd sell a lot more Russian vodka to Americans than they sell Russian AK-47s.
You'd think so, right?
It would seem to be like that. Now, why did you choose Ireland?
Well, it makes sense. First of all, I needed a place to go fast because I just didn't have any more time to sort things out and go to U.S. I needed a place to leave kind of fast. I saw that there was basically with this, crime was already getting out of control. That was a big part. But also with the re-election of the president, I knew that in general, after re-elections, presidents do the things they didn't dare do before, right? And it was a matter of, said and done. Right after the re-election, they started with all these restrictions on buying foreign currency, making it tougher for people to travel abroad. It got very scary to a point. So that's when I realized we had to leave fast. I have European citizenship because of the wisdom of my grandfather, who basically took me to the embassy when I was young and got it for me. Now, my grandfather, he had left Spain because of the Civil War. Now, it's funny how things work, that he left Spain because of the Civil War. They moved to Argentina. Then when things got tough in Argentina, lots of people moved back to Spain. And then when things got ugly in Spain, lots of people from Spain ended up leaving as well. So as you were saying before, you just never know how things turn out. At least for me, it was a matter of the possibility of going to basically any place in Europe. I definitely didn't want to end up living in Britain. I didn't like that much how things work over there. I liked Ireland in general, as in spite of the economic crisis. I think it just did more sense to me. It's a little bit more. Less population. It's not as heavily populated. It's a good place. Crime is pretty low. The cost of living is not too high. So many factors that just made a good sense to me.
Very cool. And we're going to have links to purchase Bugging Out and Relocating through Amazon in today's show notes. But you also have a great website. Can you tell the folks about that?
Yeah, it's themodernsurvivalist.com, and I have also a YouTube channel by the same name, The Modern Survivalist, in YouTube.
Very cool. Ferfal, thanks again for coming back on the show. It's always a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks a lot. Thanks.
In American Reset, the final chapter of the Economic Collapse Chronicles, the ultimate contest between liberty and tyranny reaches the apex. The Bear family and their neighbors learn the true value of community as they rely on each other to survive the war and the effects of the financial meltdown. Will the collapse bring an oppressive regime that enslaves the American people, or will the patriots prevail and guide the country back to a place of freedom, peace, and prosperity? Get your copy of American Reset in Kindle, paperback, or audio edition at Amazon.com. today.